Hello, Alexis.
Ciao
Good
Stefano,
morning.
come stai?
Very good. Molto bene. Okay, let's start this again. Okay, this time we will really try hard to make the 15 minutes share.
We're
Okay?
recommitting to 15 minutes, and to prove it, I've even started a stopwatch.
Okay. I got my
So
one too
15 minutes, I'm just
running.
like, I'm
I'm
gonna have all
looking
my
at it
power. I'm
right
gonna, I'm
now.
gonna unplug my computer.
Okay, cool. Okay, this time is your turn. And so what are you gonna share?
Well, you suggested I should talk about a blog post that I wrote a little while ago, so I'm gonna walk through that and give a very quick summary of it, and then some additional um, information that I've kind of learned and perspectives that have evolved since I published it. Um, And this is not totally unrelated to RLMs, but we're not going to talk about that connection yet. We'll save that for another day. So now
Okay.
the blog post is titled Why Claude Code 1 for Now. Um, and it explains what the title describes. As you all know, uh, Claude Code was released around February of last year. It was, I think, someone's side project. It was a weird thing you could do in the command line to access the Claude model. Anthropic already had a desktop app. They had sort of a mobile app. Um, so this was another place to put a kind of chat interface, but a somewhat unfriendly place because it's in the command line where you launch your terminal app and install it with npm whatever and then run Claude. Um, but it's become super well known. Like even Matt Iglesias, a political commentator, is talking about how he uses like Claude Code. It's a bit strange. It's like if Ezra Klein was saying like, "Hey, these are my dot files," or like Donald Trump was like recommending that you should use Ghosty. Like you don't expect such people to be talking about such things. And Ethan
Oh,
Mollick, sorry, go
yeah.
on.
Oh, by the way, I want to add a thing that I just stumbled upon a tweet yesterday, a few days ago, where Karpati was saying that it was 1 year since he's
Yep,
vibe coding the the, the
since he
the
invented the term, yeah,
name
he
vibe coding, the idea of vibe coding. He sent the tweet about a year ago. Can you believe it? It's only a year. It seemed like a 10 years we have that.
I know, and it's been through so much soap opera within that period, from
Exactly.
hated to accepted or tolerated or redefined,
Yeah.
depending on
Like
which
the
argument
the
you're in.
full level fried.
You could write a very slim but interesting book of intellectual history on just the evolution of the discussion of it in the last year.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
by the way, so Claude Code is the
right.
vibe code winner, right?
Well, yeah, you could say it's the vibe code winner in the sense that pe people are using it, even who aren't software developers and software developers are using it. And Ethan Mollick was published a little post kind of popularizing it because he writes posts for a business audience on emerging AI technology, and he had his explanations for why Claude Code was successful. And his explanation is he points out real things, but he's missing the main point because Claude Code was powerful right from the beginning before it had the features he mentioned. And the argument I make in this blog post, really, I think it's more just an explanation of a fact. I don't think it's a very adventurous argument is that Claude Code was successful because it's in the command line. And that's
Oh,
not because people like doing things in the command line. That's not because it's that much of a better interface for a human being to go in the command line and interact with a chat app, because that's what Claude Code is. It's basically a chat app with text. Um, it's because
by the way, can you like scroll down because like
yeah,
very
sure.
nice, like really definition, like the center part, yeah, the TLDR stuff. That's so
Yeah,
awesome.
so let me read the TLDR because it's the point that I'm now summarizing. Claude Code 1, not despite, but because of the command line. Because the command line is special. In a modern computer, it is the only pre-installed integration environment, by which I mean a place where two independently authored programs can easily combine and interact with each other. The key to enabling powerful AI agents is giving them tools which work in such environments. Or another way to say this is that the command line is not a great place for a person to interact with programs necessarily, but it's a great place for a program to interact with other programs. So if you can think of Claude Code as having two interfaces. There's the interface that presents to the user, then there's the interface that presents to the file system, the interface it uses to access the file system, the interface it uses to like do computing work. And Claude Code under the hood, when you ask it to do things, is using command line tools. It's it's in particular, it's using Bash. Um, Bash is the name. I don't know how technical our audience is, but it's the name for the most popular shell interpreter, and a shell interpreter is the
Yeah.
program that you run in a terminal to get a interactive prompt, just like the interactive prompt you might get in a Python REPL, um, where you can like write little commands and then things happen on your computer and they show you the output and you write more commands and more things happen.
Yeah,
And
it's a REPL of your computer, and like yeah, actually, I was noticing that in this very definition you put down here, you really put it on all the fundamental elements, like the composability, like all the other idea that you will drill down later on your like blog post, the idea of breaking things down into small composable function, like the core, the Unix fundamental
yeah,
idea. It's all about that. And uh, once upon a time, when you see someone interacting with a terminal, you always feel yourself like, oh, he's a pro. And
well, it's esoteric, right? So if you see
it
someone doing
used to be a
something
pro
that's
because
not self-explanatory, you think, wow, it's a special skill because I don't know what they're doing.
you need to add scars after using like
Yeah.
this kind of tool for a lot of time. Like I really hated. I don't know all the commands. I learned a lot of them because I have it. And initially it was so difficult, but after a while you understand the logic, the combination. You
Yep.
start reasoning in terms of this like fundamental blocks that combines together.
Yeah. Yeah, let me say something about that. So like I spent a lot of time doing iOS development, and when I was doing iOS development, I didn't use the command line. There was a long time where I was a professional software engineer for years and years and I didn't have to use the command line much. And it wasn't because I was bad at my job, it's because it wasn't relevant for that part of software development. Then when I started building major back-end systems, it just became how you do everything. So, not everyone is using it and that is what it is. And when I say that Claude Code is powerful because it uses Bash. Like that is hiding a lot. Because you say, oh, that's like one tool that Claude Code has, the Bash tool. But that's misleading because Bash is not a single tool. When we say Bash, what we mean is an entire programming environment. We mean a whole set of commands that already exist, like ls to list your files, sed to do string substitutions, grep for searching through files or searching through
Cat
text.
for reading.
Yeah, cat for reading files. So when we say bash, that's actually a shorthand for an entire toolbox of files, like of programs, other tools that it can use. And the key
Yeah.
thing is the bash environment that gives you those little commands also lets you connect them really easily. So what the reason Claude Code is powerful is because it's using bash, and the reason bash is powerful is because it has a lot of little components that you can recombine easily. And if you look at what Claude Code is doing, what makes it so powerful is that it's taking advantage of that. It's using bash under the hood to recombine lots of little commands to have this very flexible capability. And this isn't obvious because it's all happening under the hood, but if you look at what Claude Code is doing, that is why it was so powerful from the beginning. It has immediate access to your files, and it's using this flexible, recomposable toolbox to do things with the files and with text. That's the essence of the argument. So there's a kind of lesson here. Like the way to give an AI power isn't to give it three special tools. The way to give an AI or 10 tools, right, with like an MCP server, the way to do it is to give them one tool, but
Yeah,
that
to
tool is a
rule them all. It's a one tool
yeah,
to rule them all. Like,
but that
let's
one tool
make the
is
joke.
effectively a miniature programming language that has powerful primitives. And you talked about how you can learn to think in Bash. And and if you think a little bit like what these tools are doing, things like ls, grep, cut, head, tail, you can map all of those to mathematical ideas. They're all just different kinds of projection operations, like
Let me
filtering,
say one thing right
projection.
now.
Hmm.
Sorry. While you
Yeah,
were enumerating all these commands, on my mind I was picturing, oh, cut, to cut vertical. Oh, set. Look at this. Like my mind was picturing the operation. When you
yeah,
say cut, I say cut in the domain of like bash. I know exactly what it's doing, and I know what I needed. It takes a while, but when you get it, it's a superpower.
yeah. And you could map it to SQL. You could say select this, not that. That's like grep for filtering. And then you could say select this field, not that field. That's like cut for picking out particular columns. So if you zoom out a bit, there's like a very finite set of primitives that are very useful for data manipulation. And one way to look at all the obscurely named commands that are there in Bash is just that they're obscure names for a kind of magic mini toolbox of like mathematical primitives that are the things you need to handle data.
You're talking
Um,
about grep? I never remember why why the grep is coming. The cat is okay, but the grep, like
Oh, you gotta have the grep, the RG, the
remember,
FD,
like
the
yeah,
bind. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, sorry. It's remember me grasp, but yeah. Yeah, and
So
actually, yeah, you're really like pointing an interest in that, like these three rules that makes the CLI special. And I got my question after that.
yeah. Um, so I made this argument, and it took me a while to sort of articulate it and figure it out. But after making the argument, here's things that I didn't put in the blog post because I realized them afterwards. I think the Anthropic team's like kind of aware of this. Not only does Claude Code do this, but if you look at the way they do benchmarking of their model on things we bench, they say we only give it read, write, and bash. So they clearly already had the opinion that, read, write, and bash is all you need. That's like the Nouveau title. And if you look at some of the other third-party agentic harnesses, like the agentic harness, Pi, what you find is there's also this focus on minimalism, where Pi out of the box only gives you, I think, like read, write, and bash, and um, everything else is like extensions or skills on top of that. And this obviously has a connection with Solvit as well. Like what makes Solvit very powerful is that the AI can have access to a programming environment. So Claude Code has access to Bash, but Pi has access to the Python REPL, and the Python REPL is more powerful than Bash. It has a deeper uh, library of uh, deeper inventory, if you will, of like libraries that can be installed, uh, deeper mechanisms for complex data structures. That also makes composition harder. Like the simplicity of Bash is
I
probably
want
what
I
makes
want to
it
get
easy to
exactly
chain tools.
there.
Yeah,
That the good point about Bash is that it's very minimal, like few things, highly composable.
yeah.
Python, you need to write more code, but of course,
Well,
it's
yeah, like if you're writing a Python program, often a significant part of your work is like, oh, this thing spits it out like this, and this thing wants it like this, so now I need to stitch together something that connects them.
yeah,
Whereas Bash tools are so primitive that the complexity of the stitching is kind of limited. But all right, we're now 12 minutes in. So where
yeah.
you
We
had some
make it this
questions,
time.
yeah, I should turn it over to you to
I got one last interesting stuff you claim in your blog post that is really interesting to say that Bash, it's interesting because you can't compose UI, but you can compose like Bash commands.
yeah,
I cannot have two different UI programs and taking the output on one and the input on the other. I need to export and do the thing. So really, the real power to me is really the composability and the ability of the system to combine the stuff together with the idea of the stream behind the scene. You make a lot of very interesting, like historical references to how all where all this is coming from. And can you scroll up a little bit? There was the
sure.
three rules of why the bash.
Yeah, three
Yeah,
rules
the
about
previous
what's
one. Yeah,
powerful.
this one. So you say that. What is special about CLI? Bash, the CLI apps in general, like okay, they are pre-installed, fair enough, and like Bash is available almost everywhere. Even on Windows now, you have a Linux subsystem. So
Right.
Bash language, everybody can talk. Have a computer that talk the Bash language. The commands are old. This is an important one. So the model sees a lot of example of using
Hmm.
cut, grab,
It's in the
set,
pre-training. Yeah. You don't
all of
need to
that.
do a lot of synthetic data for it, I
And the
guess.
composability, the command works together, the pipe
Yeah.
idea, it's like a really interesting. I hear on your tweet how the idea of the pipe came from. It's a very interesting story. And at the end of the day, what sparks in my mind when I was reading this is that, oh, this is good because the model can do a lot of things, but from another point of view, it's preventing the system to do something in a different way, to do something better, to create a new level of abstraction. And I think that the first time I hear this concept from like Samuel Wilson, oh my God, forgot it. He says that LLM favor old version of the libraries. They tend to use old code because they see it in the training. The new
Sure.
library with better and new abstraction,
Yeah.
it's
Well, yeah.
not favor or no, it's not even in the training set. And the
Yeah,
model
you
knew
notice
you
that if
shot
you're
it.
generating native apps, right? Because like if you ask it to use Swift, it'll use an old version of Swift. It's not going to know about the concurrency stuff, or even it'll use AppKit instead of Swift UI, which honestly may work better because it may be more composable and easier to use. But yeah, you see it real quick.
This has its pros and cons, and really, the question that sparks in my mind is that is it really AI let us progress, or is let doing things faster but avoiding progression because we never build a new Unix command that any AI can use, and it's a
Yeah,
we
that's
know the basics. Simon Wilson, sorry Simon, and we know the basics that something in the training set has a different value than something in the context. Because if something in the context can be used, something in the training set, it's a part of your way of thinking. Okay, let's put it this way. So the kind of like I would say, deep question that reading your blog post comes in my mind was exactly like, yeah, what I heard, and it's coming back, and it's true. The system tends to rewrite existing function instead of like trying to leverage something. And if I want to make my own DSL, system tries always to restart from scratch. Even the idea of skill, this is very nice, all that, just that bunch of prompts that comes in. It's something that is not really a skill of the model. It's just a chunk of prompts that get injected when it's needed, but it's a few shot thing. It's not really something that the model sees. They live in two different kind of memory of the system. Oh, by the
yeah.
way,
So okay, so
we'll not be able to make the 50 minutes neither today, but yeah, let's
all
close it.
right. Well, I'll give myself 3.5 minutes to respond to this. So, I think there's an interesting set of topics which we should cover later, but I'll just call
Uh,
out some points you mentioned and color them a little bit. So you talked about the distinction between things that are in pre-training and things that are in the and in
context.
context learning. Things that are in the context. True. It's better maybe at things in the proficiency will have different qualities depending on if something is in pre-training or in context. You're kind of hinting at a kind of antiquity bias where like pre-training is only going to be full of more of old stuff than of new stuff. And so does that hold us back? Um, and then you uh, suggest that maybe that antiquity bias of the strength of pre-training means that we're not going to get new abstractions because we're just using, the old ones. And this aligns with the generalized sentiment that like, hey, I noticed that AI can do X, but it can't do Y. And sometimes people will use Y to mean like, the magic of the human soul. And sometimes people will use Y to mean like new abstractions. We're not getting the new abstractions. We just have the old abstractions. Um, I think there's a lot to say here, but the main thing I'd have to say is like, what the hell do you mean by abstraction, right? Because if you look at Bash, for instance, right, the AI is perfectly capable of creating a new Bash script that once it's created means it just calls the Bash script and no longer calls the functions within the Bash script. That is an abstraction. That's a functional abstraction right there. You're taking a bundle of things and turning them into a new unit, which can be used without knowledge of the bundle. Now you might say that's a like trivial abstraction, but it is a new abstraction in the sense that that script didn't exist before it created it. And it doesn't take a lot of prompting to like nudge AIs to do that. And if you look at the quantity of code they're generating when they make certain apps successfully, it strikes me as implausible on its face to say they're not creating abstractions. The only way you do that is by defining abstractions so vaguely that it fits your argument. Now that's not to say that there is not some sense in which they're not creating new abstractions, right? But the interesting discussion, I would say, is defining what that sense is. Like, what do we mean by interesting abstraction, difficult abstraction, new abstraction, right?
Yeah,
So you might say, look, it's going to use Bash, but it's never going to create a replacement for Bash. Um, to which I'd
that's wrong.
say two things. Like, well, do you need to? If Bash is just a set of names for a kind of timeless set of mathematical primitives, and it has those primitives, then why do we care that its names for those mathematical primitives are ls instead of, or grep instead of select, right? Like in some sense, it's got the core truth there, and we're and renaming it is trivial. But then the other thing
But
I'd say is,
let me 1 second,
yeah,
only
sure.
little detail on this one. This is correct. Those cut grep stuff are concepts. The
Hmm.
thing that may be useful to relook at or to redo, it's maybe the way the API or the way you specify the additional details of the thing. And this never get any way change. And
Yeah.
if you remake the question the second time to the model in a new session, the system reinvent the thing from scratch, is never be able to construct on top of what, of course, you can save it, you make it scale, you know it. But if you and me, we do the same thing at the same time, there's like a no way easy other than like a prompt,
Hmm.
put things down. And prompt is still something that is less deterministic than what we expect from
Yeah, yeah.
a
I
function.
think
Because
I
it's
think
still probability behind the scene. We know that. I was like,
I think all that's well, I mean, that's just more down to details of inference mechanisms. It could be deterministic if we wanted to lock it down. Um, where it's deterministic based on the random seed. I think I don't know. I think the pre-training versus ICLR is true, but sort of a sideshow because we could use synthetic data generation to, here's a possible world, right? Someone looks at Bash, they zoom out and say, well, Bash is a really weird syntax for what's really four or five important mathematical operations like project, filter, um, map, append, stuff like that. Here I'm going to come up with a cleaner, even more composable syntax and sort of rational names. And I'm just going to data synth a whole bunch of material that now uses those operations. And then I'm going to use the data synth to train the model so it has that language instead of Bash in it. You're going to show it as much of your made up simplified Bash as the
yep,
real old Bash. And then you could ask the interesting question like, does it now work better? It's like it used to have a hammer with a terrible handle, and now you've given, the AI a hammer with a like nice ergonomic handle. Does it do a better job of hammering things now that we've produced a like cleaned up DSL? Answer? I don't know. That sounds like a cool piece of research.
I
Please.
will expect that if it's better the way you put a parameter, I will expect something very useful happening, that the things you write are shorter. And if are shorter, you have more things to say in the same context window size. So the abstraction is even something very useful for the LLM to be more effective because
Yeah.
it's usable even from them. It's like the
Yeah.
embedding of an abstraction is probably getting inside all the concept of what is really useful to and
Agreed.
not how
Agreed.
it's made. And
I think it I think it probably would be better. It'd be more succinct and it would be less error prone, right? Because
that's that
stuff
there.
like Bash, it's like, well, what version of Bash am I on? Is it Mac Bash? Is it Linux Bash? Is it dash R capital? Blah blah. It's horrible stuff. Um, but I think, as I kind of allude to in the paper, one of the interesting things about the idea of like creating these mini toolkits is creating custom ones that are targeted at domains, like one that's just for email, one that's just for calendar, one that's just
The
for
DSL metaphor.
I don't know, like customer relationship management networks. Like there's a whole way you can make like a
Yep.
DSL that just is used by like salespeople to talk about sales. So and to be able to intelligently and tersely, query and compute over questions about, hey, what's the last time I talked to Bob, who's the, key decision influencer for the Wingus company? Like I think so. I think there's a huge amount of potential, in this. And then thinking about like creating these mini DSLs and then thinking about what kind of mini DSL is like logically optimal for the AI or for people. I think the whole question of abstraction is still there though. So that's an interesting one. Like Jeremy makes the point that you got all these AIs generating amazing 3D apps in the browser, but they're all doing it by using 3JS because 3JS presents really good abstractions. The AIs aren't like writing all the shaders from scratch and writing all the projective geometry from scratch. They're taking advantage of the fact that 3JS is there, but the AIs aren't creating 3JS themselves yet, or at least they need a fair amount of prompting to do it. So I think that's true. Like good abstractions are valuable, but I think historically, people are really sloppy in their discussion of what an abstraction is, and they're often like not very clear about what's a good abstraction versus a bad one, what's a trivial one versus a substantial one. And
And
we're not
not all the
gonna,
time having abstraction is a good thing. The moment you make an abstraction, you're hiding what's happening inside the abstraction. And if you don't have the code, maybe you don't know when the things goes
yeah.
bad, what to do.
Joel Spolsky's now decades old post on leaky abstractions is a classic. thing here worth referencing. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if your abstraction's leaking all over the place, it's not actually abstraction. It's like if I ask you for a bucket and the bucket has a
Yeah.
giant hole in it, bro, you haven't really given me a bucket. I can't carry water in it. You've just taken a thing and you've slapped a bucket label on it. And from my point of view, a lot of abstractions people say they've created, like, hey, I've written this great API. It's like that. Like, man, this thing has so many holes, it's not even an abstraction. It's just a
Oh
bunch of
my,
shorthands that you like. But I don't know.
the
Anyway, we're now way
onion
past time. We're up
library
to
import. Yeah,
25, so
yeah.
so we
Oh,
should
by the
we
way,
should
let
wrap
me
it.
one last word, very one last word that comes out before and I never say it. It's like when you were talking about like a bash and stuff, and we discussed about SQL before, the language you speak, even for human, I think is the same. It constrains the way you think and you operate.
Yep.
So if you are in Bash, you will think in way of Bash. If you're in Python, you will think in the way of Python. You're in SQL. I got friends that do database. They think in SQL. So even this is one of the things that maybe it's something that is really affected during the training set because the way of thinking is what that really the training set is making it's like not making remembering and stuff, but the way you think about stuff. And so yeah, it's an
Yeah, it's
interesting
very
part.
true.
I like
Like
yeah.
as we speak, so we think.
Okay, that's clear that we'd never be able to make the 15-minute share.
Oh my
So
God, I
okay,
did it
this is our
again.
longest episode ever. So
Really? Oh, I feel terrible. Okay, we gotta go then.
okay. Bye, Alexis. See you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.